Did you see Back to the Future when
I
the
did see
dude
that feature. Yeah.
okay, so he hit his head on the toilet and he created the solution that gets
Oh
people to right,
yeah.
the flux. So this is that moment for you where it seems like you're like, "Oh, here are the molecules. This is what fasting does. Now I want to recreate it in a different form."
Yeah, exactly. And that's essentially what the ultimate combination of these molecules we ended up calling MIMIO,
Yes.
MIMIO.
Yes.
And that is a fasting mimetic formulation. So what that's
Mm,
doing for you is that it's basically just taking the molecules that your body would naturally produce during a fast and then giving them back to you as a supplement so you can recreate fasting at the molecular level, activate those same beneficial cellular functionalities, activate those same beneficial longevity pathways, and get those benefits of fasting, but without actually having to fast.
I'm John Kim, a licensed therapist who used to be a miserable fuck before going on a hero's journey and turning expired relationships into revelations. I use my story to help others come with you instead of at you, unrehearsed on purpose, because self help doesn't have to be polished or complicated, just honest. We have an exciting episode for you today. We're going to talk about something that has been actually really meaningful in my life: intermittent fasting and all the benefits from fasting, and also a new angle on fasting, if you will. My guest today is Dr. Chris Rhodes. He's got a PhD in nutritional biochemistry, and he's a renowned expert in nutrition, biohacking, and fasting for longevity. So Chris has dedicated 8+ years of his life clinical researching the mysteries behind intermittent fasting and its incredible ability to optimize health and extend lifespan. Chris, this came at a really good time because I was fasting, intermittent fasting, fell off the wagon, and it's really hard to start again. This morning, I'm drinking a little bone broth, which some may consider cheating, but I haven't eaten. I haven't eaten. I'm going to fast. I'm going to try to get back on. But this is kind of the point: is fasting is so hard, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the even worse news about it is that from a physiological perspective, most people aren't actually fasting long enough to get
Mm,
these deeper state benefits of fasting that we all kind of think of when we think of intermittent fasting. So, like the anti inflammatory effects, the
right,
longevity promoting effects,
right.
the autophagy, those kinds of things, that's not really going to appear until at least around 20 to 24 hours without
Oh
food.
shit!
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Basically, no one's doing it right, including myself.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's really unfortunate. Yeah, like the most
Uh,
common practice is definitely the 16/8 style,
right,
which unfortunately from a biochemical perspective is kind of just like glorified skipping breakfast. So we
right.
have, inside of us our glycogen reserves, which are essentially our body's stored carbohydrates. And up until around that 20 to 24-hour mark, your body is essentially going to be running off of the stored glycogen, the carbohydrates that are in your system, and it won't exhaust them until that 24-hour mark. So you don't really get that metabolic switch from glucose and carbohydrate metabolism over to, fat oxidation and ketone body metabolism until those later stages of fasting. And that's kind of just when the system begins to turn on, let alone like where it peaks.
I just told my wife, "Hey, listen, there's no wrong way to fast," because she saw me drinking the bone broth, and she's like, "Is that cheating?" Can I just say for people who are just starting, can we give them a little bit of hope? Can we just reframe, because we're using a lot of big words, we're gonna get into all of this, but even an 8-hour fast, even just skipping breakfast, are there still some benefits to that, right? I don't want to pull that away from anyone who hasn't gone 24 hours, 48 hours, or that's not in their future.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The earlier stages of fasting definitely do still have some benefits, and part of that comes from the fact that we in, the modern Western world have kind of always been fed this narrative of you have to have, 3 meals a day plus snacks, right? You almost have to be constantly eating. If you ever feel hunger, that's really bad for you, and your body's literally eating itself, that kind of thing. And that's kind of very far removed from the actual biochemical evolutionary origins of humans, right? It's very weird that we were ever in a situation where we just have constant access to food.
Right.
And because of that, there's what's called the postprandial response. So anytime you eat food of any kind, you're kind of throwing your body out of, homeostasis, this metabolic set point. So you're taking in food that's going to throw metabolic chaos into the system, a lot of glucose, triglycerides, proteins that your body has to really focus on. All right, these things are coming in. I have to get them where they need to go. I have to break them down. So it takes a lot of energy, and that's what your body is going to be focusing on. You also have this thing called dietary inflammation that happens. So food is a foreign molecule, right? That's coming into the body. So it's going to set off these inflammatory responses. And that postprandial state, that post eating state, takes around 4 to 6 hours after a meal to really resolve itself, get you back to more of a maintenance and repair mode from your cellular perspective, rather than that inflammatory kind of we got to get rid of all these nutrients or else we'll die high energy state. So when we think about a 3 meals a day plus snack diet, right? Our Western nutrition pattern, you're never really getting out of that postprandial state. So you're just kind of constantly in a state of like almost over nutrition or dietary inflammation, which can kind of create like chronic inflammatory problems, which can then, lead to worse things over time. So those shorter term fasts really help to just get your body out of that postprandial state, put you into like more of a maintenance and repair state, just normal homeostasis that is much better for you in the long term than kind of that chronic dietary inflammation.
For anyone, and this is myself included, most of my friends who believe that life is about snacks, this episode's going to be kind of a cold shower. Let's put a bookmark here, Chris. I want to know about you and your story, how you got so mission driven and fired up about this. When did you get fascinated with fasting? And I know you experimented a lot on yourself too, right?
I did, yeah. So I would say that my journey with fasting really started after I got out of college. I got my
Mm.
BS in biochemistry from Loyola Marymount University down in LA, but got out like a lot of college kids, didn't really know what I wanted to do. So took an immunology fellowship at Stanford where I just kind of started pouring through all of the research that I could get my hands on, and eventually came across healthy aging and longevity, because that was something that I thought was so fascinating, because it used to be the myth and legend, Ponce de Leon, the Fountain of Youth, all of that, and now is this very active area of scientific research. So when you're in that space, eventually you come across fasting, because fasting is one of the only ways that we know of to reliably extend the lifespan in animals. And
Mm.
when you kind of do an even deeper dive into that, it can also help to prevent, treat, or delay most major diseases. It's kind of this one thing that does everything, and it's free, number one, and it's
Yeah.
like you're not adding anything into the system, right? It's not like this superfood or this wonder
Right.
drug that's activating these pathways, but somehow fasting activates this, what I like to call, longevity bio program that's already inside of us, but just isn't ordinarily turned on. And so when that clicked for me, I was like, okay, that's unacceptable. It actually made me mad, because I was like, my body knows how to live to be 120 years old and in perfect health, but
Mm.
it's just not doing it. So that's
Hmm.
what really catapulted me into trying to figure out, all right, what is happening in the body during these long stages of fasting that turn on that longevity bio program? And is there a way that we can recreate that state, those effects, but without actually having to fast? So that's kind of the point where I started doing a lot of experimentation on myself. I was
Mm.
like, all right, let's try it and let's see. So I did a 72-hour fast and just took
Wow.
my blood, took my cells, every couple of hours throughout that process. And then
Wait, is that just water? So water, no food, 72
yes,
hours.
correct. Yeah, just
Wow.
just water. No calories. So I would
Right.
do, tea, or, like a Powerade Zero or something like that, but just
Coffee.
yeah, exactly. So that's really the main thing. And I would say, to the point of bone broth before, if you're not taking in more than, 200 or 300 calories a day, but
Mm.
biochemically speaking, biologically speaking, your body's gonna kind of stay in that fasting state. That's what we were doing there, looking at blood, looking at cells, seeing what the changes were over time. And what I saw was essentially, all right, after around 36 hours, that's when you get this big jump of functionality that happens.
Mm,
So
mhm.
suddenly my cells became much more resilient to stress. They were much more anti-inflammatory, less reactive to autoimmune stimuli. They were more antioxidant, so they were producing less free radical damage overall, but then had greater protection from that damage as well. And then they were more cardioprotective. They had better metabolic flexibility. So that was really, really cool for me to be able to see, all right, I did something, and then my cellular functionality actually changed and kind of made me into, a super person, right? So that was very almost like addicting for me. I was like, great, I can see that it works under a microscope. I'm going to adopt this as a lifestyle. And so I did that for around 2 years. I did alternate day fasting. So fasting
Wow.
one day, not eating the next day, rinse and repeat pretty much forever. But the downside of that is that there's a weird element of social isolation that comes
Yeah.
with that style of fasting. So
You started losing friends who
yeah,
are foodie,
yeah,
or
exactly.
especially in San Francisco where the restaurants and yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah, they
Yeah,
are
yeah.
so good. Yeah, no one wants to be the person who is, they're eating a meal, you're sitting across from them with your glass of water and just like staring
Right, right,
while
right.
they eat, right? Yeah. So there was that. Like our society is not set up for someone to live an alternate day fasting lifestyle while, integrating into the normal functions of daily life.
Wait, did you also move? Did you work out to fitness, or were
I
you
did.
just
Yeah.
while you fasted? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I usually try to lean into whatever my body was doing at the time. So for the fasting states where there's not a lot of energy going around, my body's primed to burn fat, burn glycogen, whatever it is, in that catabolic state, that breakdown state, that's when I would do cardio. Or
Mm,
sprinting, like high intensity interval
wow.
training, that kind of stuff, because
Yeah.
that the whole point of that is like to get to exhaustion. So on your fasting days, that's a way easier to do. And
Yeah.
then on my eating days, that's when I would do a lot of strength training, because those were the
Mhm.
days where I'm basically eating double the calories that I normally would. So you get a lot of those pro growth responses, really getting all the protein incorporated to where it needs to go. So just kind of leaning into the anabolic processes on my eating days.
I love this episode because I'm getting schooled, and what a treat to have someone not only with a lot of letters before your name, as in doctor, but also, dude, you've done so much research on yourself, and
Yeah,
it feels like you've kind of committed your life to investigating the benefits of fasting, not only from a informational point of view, but also let me use myself as a guinea pig, right? Um,
absolutely.
and and then not just putting your toe in the shallow end of the pool, but actually when you talk about eating one day, not eating the other day, and also going back and forth for an extended period of time, that's like legit. That's what most people cannot do. So you did that, and what were your findings? And then then you created a company. You wanted to help other people with this, right? This is where
Right.
the biohacking comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started experimenting on myself, I was still at Stanford. At that point, I could see these great cellular effects that were happening. And so the next step for me was I decided, okay, we know that these effects are happening. The next step is kind of why are these effects
Mhm.
happening? So that's what I dedicated my PhD research to. So went to UC
Mm,
Davis after that, and we did a larger scale clinical study. So we wanted to make sure that the things that were happening in my body were also happening in other people's bodies. So we had 20 people come in, 10 men, 10 women, to avoid a gender bias, make sure that we were looking at universal responses to
mhm,
fasting and not just
mhm.
gender specific ones. And what we found there was that when we fasted people for 36 hours, basically what happened with me also happened with them. So their cells became
Mm,
more anti-inflammatory, more antioxidant, more cardioprotective, better metabolic flexibility. And that's a big thing, right? Because in the nutrition world, usually we're looking at something very subtle and very over time. So we're going to
mhm.
say, okay, what are the effects of eating more strawberries for 6 months and then
Right.
trying to, do it before and under there. So to be able to see this young, healthy population all of a sudden kind of become super people over one day is really significant. So we wanted to figure out what is the difference between the baseline state and the fasting state that could be causing those changes. And what we found was that there are these unique molecules that are produced by the body that are really only elevated during a fast. And when we
Mm.
screened through those molecules, we were able to find this synergistic combination of four of them that when we took them and basically just used it as a supplement, we could recreate these beneficial effects of fasting. So those same anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and cardioprotective effects. And then because we were really interested in fasting as a longevity intervention, we also did a lifespan analysis with animals and basically found that supplementing with these four fasting metabolites could extend their lifespan by 96%. So basically doubling
Wow.
their lifespan just through supplementation.
Wait, hold on. So this is your so I grew up in the 80s, so I don't know if you'll get this reference, but this is your flux. Did you see Back to the Future when
I
the
did see that
dude
in the future. Yeah.
okay, so he hit his head on the toilet and he created the solution that gets
Oh,
people
yeah.
to right the flux. So this is that moment for you where it seems like you're like, "Oh, here are the molecules. This is what fasting does. Now I want to recreate it in a different form."
Yeah, exactly. And that's essentially what the ultimate combination of these molecules we ended up calling MIMIO,
Yes.
MIMIO.
Yes.
And that is a fasting mimetic formulation. So what that's
Mhm.
doing for you is that it's basically just taking the molecules that your body would naturally produce during a fast and then giving them back to you as a supplement. So you can recreate fasting at the molecular level, activate those same beneficial cellular functionalities, activate those same beneficial longevity pathways, and get those benefits of fasting, but without actually having to fast.
Okay, and I'm sure you've heard this so many times. The fact that you can take this and get the same benefits to someone who is having to not eat, it sounds too good to be true. It sounds like magic. It sounds like right, and I'm sure you've gotten that many times.
Sure.
What do you say to people who are saying that you know that old saying,
Yeah.
if it sounds
Yeah.
too good to be true, it's
It
not,
probably
kind of
is.
thing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, yeah, what I would say is like number one, I totally get it, right? Like saying fasting in a pill, that's a big claim. But number two, I'm right there with you. I was skeptical as well. I was like, okay, we showed that this works in human cells. We showed that this works in animal models. What is the next step there? So at this point, we have done 3 different clinical studies with the Mimeo formulation. So our first one was our pilot study, basically where we took the supplement and we wanted to see if this could recreate the benefits of fasting, even when people were eating. So we had subjects come in, eat a standardized breakfast alongside a placebo control, and then looked at their before and afters on their cellular functional metrics, like we did in the original study. Or we had those people come back after a washout period, eat that same standardized breakfast, but with supplementation with Mimeo. And what we found there was that when people ate the breakfast with the placebo control, they had a big loss of cellular functionality, which is kind of the postprandial state that we were talking about before. So their cells became pro-inflammatory and pro-oxidant and less cardioprotective. But when we ate that same meal with supplementation with Mimeo, we were able to not only prevent all of that loss of function, but then actually add gains of function on top of that that mimicked what
Mm.
we saw during a fast. So instead of being pro-inflammatory, their cells were anti-inflammatory and antioxidant and cardioprotective. So that was the first study where we showed that in humans, you can get these fasting-like benefits even during a meal. And then after that, we did another clinical case study with Mount Sinai, the Dave Petrino lab there,
Mm.
where we just looked at a before and after of 8 weeks worth of Mimeo supplementation and saw really great effects there. So we saw these improvements in triglyceride levels, cholesterol levels, HDL, LDL levels, in lower glucose levels, lower insulin levels, lower HbA1c levels, a 50% increase in free testosterone levels. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah, really big one there. And then we were
Well,
all
I just wanna say, so as a 52-year-old who struggles with, low T like every 52-year-old, that's a big deal
yeah,
that also the testosterone levels, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. We were also tracking through biological age. So he
Mhm.
started at around, 50, 51 years old from a biological perspective. And at the end of that 8 weeks, we were able to get him down to 48 and a half years. So, a 2.5 year
Wow.
reduction in biological age just in that 8 week time span. So that was kind of the big moment for us where it's like, all right, this is really doing something very positive for human health in a pretty short amount of time, right? Just the 8 week supplementation, 2 months. And
Well,
so
I also want to say, I don't know how old you are, Chris. You don't have to say, but you look like you look like you're 18. So
76, in fact.
this must be working because you're pulling a Benjamin Button. You look very, very young.
Yeah, we love to be able to age people in reverse. It's the
Yeah.
new science, right? So after this study, we saw all these great effects. We're like, okay, great. What's the next thing that you do in science? You repeat the experiment, but just with a larger study cohort. So
Uh-huh.
we just recently completed this year our randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study where we looked at 8 weeks of supplementation with Mimio again. And there we found very similar effects. So all those same great metabolic effects, lower glucose levels, lower cholesterol levels, lower cellular stress levels, but then
Mm,
also great impacts on digestive symptoms. So less bloating, less abdominal pain when eating, but then also this really powerful effect on hunger control and appetite suppression. So
mm,
tracking through people and their hunger scores on a daily basis, we saw that over that 8 week time course, we had a significant reduction in distraction from cravings, in just overall daily hunger. They were much better at eating only when they were hungry. And when they did eat, they had better satiety. Basically, they got fuller faster and stayed fuller
mm.
longer. So huge impacts on really helping to help people manage their cravings, their hunger levels, and then these metabolic effects as well. So, when you take all that together, what we've shown, through like rigorous science, gold standard clinical studies, is that Mimeo can really give you these fasting like benefits even when you're eating, and can not only do that, but help to make fasting that you're doing easier. So it's a great fasting enhancer as well because it has these appetite suppression effects that go along with it.
What is your routine now? I mean, obviously, besides Mimeo, from everything that you've learned, tell us a little bit about your lifestyle and then the benefits of your routines.
Yeah.
What's also hard for you? I'm sure, you're human, right? So there's gonna be struggles as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So where I am right now in kind of my fasting journey, and what I think ends up working really well for me, is that when I was originally doing the alternate day fasting, I got 2 years deep into that.
Mhm.
And I was very rigorous about it, very regimented. I got to a point where I was still doing it even when we were on vacations, right? And my sister was the one who actually told me, hey, sure, you're going to live longer, but what is the point of living longer if you have to live less?
Right, right, without donuts, yeah, what's the point
Exactly.
without donuts? Yeah.
And so that was very impactful for me. So I was like, okay, maybe I feel like taking this a little bit too far. So what I've done now is adopted a one meal a day schedule. So I'll eat
Mhm.
every day, but I'll just load that all at the end of the day, kind of like as a big meal. So my daily routine, what it looks like is essentially I will wake up in the morning, I'll take my Mimeo alongside some green tea, and that'll basically carry me through with the appetite suppression effects and kind of the energizing cognition enhancement effects that Mimeo also has. And that gets me to basically the end of the day. I'll go work out in the fasted state. And then after that, come home and have my like big reward meal at the end of the
Alright.
day, which can essentially be, almost anything that I want, right? So that's
Right, just
how I'm living now, is that this really nice balance, I think, between I can be very focused and not thinking about food, not worrying about food all the way through the day, very productive CEO lifestyle, right? And
yeah,
then at
yeah.
the end of the day, you kind of get to compartmentalize the rest of that and have a big feast, which is great.
And what are the benefits of this, would you say? What are the micro and macro? What are the overall benefits of this? Not only Mimeo, but also 1 meal a day, working out while you're fasting, like, all these things we're talking about. What are you seeing the most as far as the most beneficial to you in your life?
So I think that the most beneficial thing of all of this in my life is that it just works for me, right? So I
Uh,
I love to be able to really focus in on whatever I'm doing at the time and kind of give my full attention to it. So having the one meal a day schedule alongside Mimeo really lets me do that throughout the day. I can just be dialed in and focused into work. I can work more productively. I can get things done faster. So
Mm-hmm.
I really like that element of it. And then in the same vein, when I'm off the clock, then I get to really decompress from that, right? Where it's like, all right, well, now we're in celebration mode almost. So you get this big kind of treat reward at the end of the day that helps you keep your sanity. And I don't think about work when I'm doing that. Like, all right, now I'm fully focused on food because this is the time for that. So helping to kind of put things in boxes, there's not as much bleed through, and so that allows you to kind of keep your mental state uncluttered, which I really like. From like just a metabolic biochemical point of
Yeah.
view, I really like taking the Mimeo with the one meal a day lifestyle because Mimeo itself was designed to mimic a 36-hour fast, right? So
Mm.
even me, when I'm doing, a 24-hour fast, I'm still not necessarily producing high levels of these metabolites. So it really helps to kind of supercharge the benefits of my fast and give me more benefits that I might not have otherwise experienced because I wasn't fasting long enough.
What are you seeing physically? One of the things that I struggle with is bloating, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Not so much during the day. My gut's all fucked up. I think at night, I feel like, speaking of 80s and 90s, I feel like Demi Moore on the cover of Vanity Fair when she was pregnant, naked. That's my stomach every night.
Got the food, baby.
They got the food, baby. Yeah. What does fasting slash Mimeo do for people who struggle with bloating? Because I know it's very common. Yeah.
Yeah, so bloating is actually one of the interesting things that we looked at in our randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study. And we found that people who were on Mimeo experienced both less abdominal pain and less bloating, significantly less versus the placebo control throughout that 8-week period of time. So I'm not entirely sure what the mechanism of that is, but there
Uh-huh.
does seem to be this, beneficial impact on GI health from taking
Mm.
the Mimeo product. In terms of what fasting can do for bloating or, digestive symptoms like that, it's kind of a little bit like what we were talking about before, where you're really just giving your intestinal system, your GI tract, a break to a
Hmm.
certain extent. So you're definitely not going to experience as much bloating when you're fasting because there's
Right.
there's not much there to bloat off of, right?
Right. Right.
And your intestines are going to be like, they're not going to have to be harvesting nutrients all the time. They're not going to have to be dealing with the inflammatory responses that can come from food. So
Hmm.
they're just going to be able to focus more on that rest, relax, repair, homeostasis kind of functionality. So that will be the beneficial impact there.
It's a giant speed bump, right? You're almost giving your body a break as far as digestion. Let me ask you this: for women, a lot of my listeners are women. Women in fasting, are there different findings as opposed to? Because I know with like even like ice plunges, everyone was doing it. It became very cool to ice plunge, and then they found out that it's different for women, and depending on I think cycles, hormones, all this other stuff. With fasting, is there a difference between women, men,
Yeah, definitely.
bodies?
So
Yeah.
when we did the original fasting study, we had an equal proportion of men and women. So
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate goal of the study was to identify what the universal differences were between baseline state and a fasted state. And that's why we included both men and women to just look at human biology in general. But what we did find was that there were certain differences between the gender responses to fasting. And I haven't done a like total deep dive into that data set yet because there were some more other interesting findings that we were focusing on. But definitely women seem to have a harder time fasting than men. There's a big
Mm,
impact of the hormonal cycle that goes into
yeah.
that, the menstrual cycle as well. Unfortunately, outside of our studies, there haven't been a lot of fasting studies that have been focused solely on women. So it's
Yeah.
very hard to, from a scientific perspective, really track through what the actual biochemical changes are and how they're different between men and women. But I can say from our experience, from our research, there definitely are differences there. But yeah, usually it comes down to women typically have a harder time fasting than men. And that
Yeah.
does have to do with just the hormonal cycle that goes on.
If you're a mom and you only are able to get through life based on snacks, MIMIO might be the the solution because fasting, I gotta say, it's powerful, but I don't know how sustainable it is, you know? I feel like and also you see results if you have never fasted, I think you see results very fast, but then if you turn fasting into a lifestyle, you see less and less results, or maybe that's just perception, but that's what I find for me. Is like in the beginning, you see a lot of results, you're motivated, and then it kind of tapers off, and then you're like, nah, I don't want to do this anymore, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's definitely that element to it because your body does go through these physiological adaptations to fasting.
Yeah.
And usually, in my experience, that takes around 2 weeks to really get your body used to the fasting schedule, the new kind of circadian rhythms, the hunger tracking clocks, all of that fun stuff that can be very impactful for people in the sense that if you were really struggling with cravings before, always eating those like 3 meals a day plus snacks kind of situation, and then just were able to put that hunger control back in the right context.
Mhm.
Our body responds to hunger in the same way that it responds to like sleep patterns, right? So we have these circadian rhythms where we come to expect food at certain times based
Right.
on our patterns of behavior. So if you are always eating breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch at noon, dinner at 5, your body is actually going to give you cues where it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I can tell that it's like 7:30, it's 8, like I'm going to tell you that we're really hungry right now, or same thing at noon, same thing at 5. So when you break those cycles, it can be really hard at first because your
Mhm.
body is giving you this hunger response at 7:30 and it's like, "Hey, this is not when we normally eat. We're hungry now." And then
This is where the term hangry comes
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Body's
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
telling you, like, "You have given me a pattern that I'm supposed to stick to. I'm doing my job, why aren't you doing yours?" Right?
Right.
Well, you can break those patterns and you can reset those circadian rhythms, but it takes time for your body to actually adapt to it. And that's what I found when I was doing alternate day fasting. It took around 2 weeks to really for my body
Mm.
to start understanding, "Okay, we're just gonna not tell you that you're hungry at any point in time anymore because it's useless." Right?
Yeah.
And so that was the really interesting part for me is that now, because I've been fasting for so long, I'm very, I would say, uncoupled almost
Mhm.
from the sensation of physical hunger. Like I get it sometimes every now and again, but it's something that I can always kind of just put a little lid on where it's like, oh, I feel hungry. Okay, that's fine. Like, log that away, but we're doing something different now. And so a lot of it just comes down to just mental stuff at this point for me of just like, oh right, I haven't eaten today. Let me go eat. I like this is the time now.
You know, if you get anything from this episode, one thing that we do have solutions, but one thing I want to leave you with is snacks were invented by us, meaning animals that are not domesticated. Fasting is just that's they have no choice. That's a way of life, right? You don't know when, and where you're gonna get your next meal. And I think with humans, because I mean, snacks alone, feeding hunger, numbing through food, all of that stuff has turned into a lifestyle. And so to break that pattern is going to be difficult, but it could actually completely change your life. And I want to say Dr. Chris Rhodes, who invented this MIMIO, is giving you training wheels, right? Because, I mean, are you saying don't fast, just do this? Or are you saying use this as handrails to fasting or a combination of both?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of both. All of our
Yeah.
clinical studies have been done with folks who did not change their diet or lifestyle at all. They just took Mimeo and they were able to get those fasting like benefits to the hunger control, the metabolic effects, the digestive symptoms, the cellular stress levels, all of that fun stuff. But I personally use Mimeo as a fasting enhancer, as kind of just a way to help give me more benefits than I would ordinarily achieve and make the whole
Mhm.
process easier. And we have a ton of people, a ton of customers who use it that way as well. So it really is just, different strokes for different folks. And however you want to do it, there's no wrong way to take it.
Yeah, so let's talk about Mimeo. So this is basically 2 capsules. You said you took it with tea, so you don't have to eat while you take it, obviously, because
Right.
you're
Yeah.
you're
We
fasting. Yeah.
typically recommend that people do take it with food, especially the first time through. There's one
Yep.
ingredient in there, nicotinamide, which is
Mm,
a form of niacin. And some people have sensitivity to niacin metabolism that can
mm.
actually cause a little bit of GI upset if you're sensitive to that. But once you know that you're not, then it's totally fine to take it with or without food.
And you mentioned 8 weeks, which is actually very fast.
Yeah.
Seeing
Yeah.
results, right?
Yep,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, all of our clinical studies have been done within an 8-week time period. So that's all it takes to see these significant clinical benefits.
I'll tell you how powerful our snack nation is because you know what they're asking is they're like, hey, does it come in gummies? Does it come in flavors that taste like snacks? Does it come in like all these, right now it's this, it's something that is very easily digestible and you take it. Does it matter day or night?
No, we usually recommend taking it with your first meal of the day,
Yeah.
whenever that is. So if it's in the morning, morning is fine. The only reason why we don't necessarily recommend taking it at night is that sometimes Mimeo can have an energizing effect for some people.
Yeah.
So we've
Yeah.
had folks take it at, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night.
Right. Instead of at
Tell us
night.
like,
Yeah.
wow, I really enjoyed the experience of taking that product, but I was also up until 2 in the morning.
Right. 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 So morning recommended. Dr. Rhodes, what's next for you and your mission?
Mimio actually stands for mimic and biology smushed together. And
Mm,
that kind of gets at this underlying biomimetic research approach that we have. So, in the same way that we ran this process with fasting, looking at what happens in the body during a fast, finding a way to recreate it, we want to do this with other states of the body as well. So, let's look at
mm.
exercise and see what happens there. Is there a way that we can recreate that? Meditation, sleep, cold exposure, all of these really fascinating internal changes that happen in the body in response to specific states, stimuli, whatever it is, and finding ways that we can recreate those benefits on demand.
Man, you're creating some big shortcuts. You're creating some big shortcuts.
The
And I also,
biohack is what we like to say.
yeah, the ultimate biohack. All the information on where to get Mimeo will be in the show notes. Check it out. I'm actually taking some today. When you were mentioning schools, because I'm from LA, you said, oh, LMU, Loyola
LMU.
Marymount.
Yep.
Yeah. And I remember thinking as a C student who went to Cal State Northridge, like, oh, that's where all the smart kids go. And then you said Stanford, and then you said UC Davis. I'm like, oh my God, this guy is like super. Of course, it makes sense that you're biohacking because of, the schools. So anyway, I'm just saying that I feel like that definitely gives you street cred where you studied and where you're doing research.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
where the science was. If there's one
Yeah.
thing that I've learned as a scientist, as a researcher, is that you always follow the data. And that's where
Yeah.
the data ended up leading me.
Yeah. Where can we find you and your company on
Yeah, if
social
you
media?
want to learn more about Mimio, we are at mimiohealth.com, MIMIO health.com. Same with all of our socials at Mimio Health. And if you want to find me specifically, I have a TikTok channel at that nutrition dr, that nutrition doctor. So you can hear me scream about nutrition into my bathroom mirror.
Yeah. Follow Dr. Rhodes. More info on biohacking and health. Thank you for listening, and all the information will be in the show notes. Be well.